early 60s of the civil rights movement down south, right? What was the base of the movement? The church. The base of the movement was the church. Who were the main leaders in the movement? The preachers were the main leaders in the movement. And there was a strong spiritual flavor. There was a strong spiritual tendency in the movement at that particular time, in the early 60s down south. Strong spiritual tendency. That when you check out like the Eyes on the Prize movies and you check out the books and so on and so forth, you'll see they was talking about God. That we got to rely on God, right? The spiritual men were the leaders of the movement and so on and so forth. The church itself was actually the base of the movement, right? That's Islam. The base of the Islamic movement is the masjid. The masjid. And the leaders are the imams. You know, that type of thing. So even if you look at their practice of it, aside from the hooping and hollering and finding the Holy Ghost, aside from all of that, you'll see that they're more Islamic than they are Christian. If you go before, for example, a body of people, Christians, you know, African American Christians, and it could be whatever. It could be whatever type of occasion it is, a graduation ceremony, whatever type of occasion that it is, right? Even when you see on TV and they have these little petty award ceremonies and so on and so forth, there's always a deep spiritual flavor to it. There's always a deep spiritual flavor to it. So you get up there and you start talking about God and so on and so forth, they don't look at you like you're crazy. But you go to a graduation ceremony at Harvard somewhere, and you start talking about God, they'll look at you like you're crazy. So even in the practice, even in their practice of Christianity, it is actually more closer to Islam than it is to actual Christianity. Why the program today, too, brothers and sisters? Because there is a tendency for this government and the Yahoo. You have to understand, brothers and sisters, that once the Africans in this country, those of African descent in this country, get a hold of Islam, it's all over. It's all over. And these are people who know the history. These are people who know our history. They know it. They know, for example, that there was not one Christian who came over here on the slave ship. They know it. Not one Christian, but that's next week. You know, but there wasn't one Christian who came over here on that slave ship. That the people were either Muslims or they followed what's commonly called the more traditional, let's say, traditional in quotes, you know, religion, like the pagan religion, but at least 30%, which is a conservative estimate, were Muslims. And they understood that the more, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but whenever they dealt with a Muslim slave, it was much different than dealing with a non-Muslim slave. And like I said, we'll get into more of that next week. Brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us the importance of history. Allah says in Quran, by the English meaning, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, many eras have passed, historical periods have passed before you. Go about then in the land and behold the end of those who gave the lie to the truth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us as Muslims that when we should travel, Muslims should travel. And in traveling, we should be studying history as we travel. We should be, as we're traveling, we should be studying those peoples who came before, who were just as powerful in their day as the United States is in this day. Just as powerful, if not even more powerful. And Allah is saying, look what happened to those who gave the lie to the truth. Travel about the land. So traveling is something that we have to do, and we know that traveling broadens our perspective. You could have a person who's done a lot of traveling and had very little formal education, and that person will be more educated than someone who's had a lot of formal education who didn't travel that much. Traveling broadens the scope. It broadens the perspective. So as Muslims, we have to travel. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that one of the characteristics of non-believers, is that they do not learn from history. So as Muslims, we are taught that we have to travel. As Muslims, we are taught that we have to learn from history. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in Quran that the non-believers, they do not learn from history. The non-believers, for example, who are in power today, do not learn from the history of those yesterday. They're actually making some of the same exact mistakes that were made back in the day. So America now finds itself going through a situation in which America is falling. America is coming apart. And America is making the same exact mistakes, like, for example, as Rome. Same exact mistakes. Same exact mistakes. Economically, socially, politically, making the same exact mistakes. If you look at the decline of the Roman Empire and the characteristics of that decline, they match almost identical to what is taking place in America today. Allah puts it in this way by the English meaning, have they never journeyed through the land so that they may have hearts to gain wisdom or ears to hear with? It is not the eyes, but the hearts in the breast that are blind. That are blind. They're blind. Have they not gone around the land and seen? You know what I'm saying? Haven't they seen it? But they're blind. So the non-believer does not learn from history, my respected brothers and sisters, and that will be their downfall.